What's up, everybody, and welcome to the 13th episode of the Armchair Army podcast. We have a very special guest. His name is Victor Kernes, and he is from the Rebound podcast. He's going to speak all about the NBA. We talk some Lebron, we talk some Sixers, who's going to win the West and the Eastern Conference, and the biggest opponent against Golden State this year as well, and even some future picks where LeBron is going next year or where Paul George is going to end up as well. We even talk some rookies and who stood out to Victor, so I can't wait to get this one rolling. So without further ado, let's get it, let's roll.
All right, I am so excited to welcome Victor Kernes from the Rebound podcast. He is an NBA specialist, so we are going to pick his brain about some NBA. Victor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm really excited to be on and chat with you today about the NBA.
Awesome, man. We appreciate you coming on, and I want to get right into it, just speaking about this rookie class, because there's been so much talk about the depth of this class with Kyle Kuzma going in the late first round and how well the rookie class is playing. Has there been a specific player that stood out to you so far?
There's actually a lot of them that have been standing out, but I would say the first one is Jason Tatum on the Boston Celtics. He's really been, I think, one of the rookies that has contributed the most to a team, especially as a starter already and in his rookie year, and he's been able to play defensively probably among the best in the rookie class so far, and also put up some offensive numbers. So I think he's been so far the most impressive and has the most impact so far on the team.
Tatum has been really, really good, and especially against the Golden State Warriors a couple of days ago, just lighting it up down the stretch. He seemed like a go-to guy other than Kyrie on that team. And speaking of the rookies and such a young team, the Sixers have been playing really well as well. It seems like they're a couple of years ahead of schedule, which is great for them, and Ben Simmons has been good. What do you see the Sixers doing this year? Are they a playoff team, or are they going to be one of those, borderline teams?
I think they're going to be a playoff team just because of their big wins they've gotten. And even last night, I believe when they played the Warriors, they were up by 24 points at one point, and the Warriors did come back and beat them. However, I think just for them to get up that high, I think Embiid went out a few minutes after a possible injury. He was a little afraid after a scary fall, but I think that they're the real deal this year. And after signing J.J. Redick in the offseason, they brought in a good veteran and someone who can contribute as a starter too for his shooting, which is really something they lacked for the past couple seasons. And I think as long as Embiid and Ben Simmons are healthy, I think they're definitely a playoff team. And Ben Simmons, too, he's not technically a rookie from the class of this past draft. However, he was a rookie technically because he didn't play a game last season when he was originally drafted, and he's been amazing. And I think that we're seeing some of the same progress that we saw from Blake Griffin when he sat out his rookie year and came back the next season from an injury as well. And then he really dominated his rookie season. He was one of the first players to become an all-star during his rookie year in a long time. And I think Ben Simmons is on that same trajectory.
And it seems like the more games that Ben Simmons plays, the more, impressive he's been. He brings the ball to the floor. They play him at the four. He's been so versatile. So it's been awesome to see his growth. And it's almost like a Sixers legacy now that you have to sit out the first year, because Markelle Fultz, again, is sitting out his rookies. I'm not the whole year, but he's sitting out the first couple of games. Is Markelle Fultz going to come back? And if so, what do you expect out of Markelle Fultz?
I heard today that he's still expected to be another 2 to 4 weeks in addition to the original timeline that he was going to be injured for. I think they probably should have done the same strategy like you said, and probably should have held him out at the beginning of the season, not let him play those, 3 games he only played, because you can already tell there was something wrong with his shoulder. I think once he figures out if he's going to need surgery or if there's a proper rehab program he can be in to help strengthen his shoulder back to normal for him to play, back to his capabilities, then that'll be good for him. It's just unfortunate right now that he has to sit out and that Philly, again, has a top pick who has to have some time on the sidelines, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard seeing these rookies not play in their first year, but at the same time, they are so young, and Markelle Fultz is only 20 years old, so he's got so much time left in the league. Everybody wants that instant gratification, but it's almost for the best for their careers. And they have so many assets now in the Sixers, and I've been hearing a lot of rumors. I was going to do this later, but hearing a lot of rumors of like LeBron or Paul George, them having cap space for a big-name player like that to fit in with Embiid and Ben Simmons. Do you think any of those superstars are going to be interested in going to Philly?
I don't know, and the main reason being is health. I mean, I think in 2 years that once they show for 2 seasons that they can have success and a healthy roster, that possibly that could attract some bigger name free agents. But in this upcoming class where there's going to be a lot of guys available, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it just yet. It's possible, but Philadelphia, we've all seen during Sam Hinkie's time there during the whole the process that they were pretty bad. So they kind of lost a lot of I guess faith in some players' eyes there of what they were doing as an organization. But it appears they've turned things around. So I wouldn't put it past anybody that there might be a possibility someone comes next off season. But yeah, I think the health is going to be a big determining factor for anyone considering that.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with Embiid and that scare you said that he had the other day. I was watching the game and everybody kind of held their breath for a moment because he's been playing so well. But going back to the rookies and that in the draft class, who do you think in your mind is the best steal of the draft?
The best steal of the draft? That's a good question. I think Donovan Mitchell for the Utah Jazz has been phenomenal. It seems like they're going to be already making him the number one option on that team, mainly because Gobert's out right now, and they are trying to rely a lot on him because a couple other players haven't really stepped up as they thought they were, like Rodney Hood and Alec Burks, and so it's just kind of he's the rookie I think that has the most responsibility at the moment, and I think he's been one of the biggest values for that team and for where they got him. I think at 13th or 14th. I can't remember where he went, but he went a little later on in the first round, and I think that he's been doing pretty well for them.
Yeah, so many picks to pick from because there's been so many players that have came out of the draft. It seems like they're performing above their level of play. But the slowest start, I guess you would say, not really for Golden State, but they've got beat a couple of times in big primetime games. Is Golden State going to be okay?
I think they're fine. I think with a couple more shots made in that Boston game, which was the big topic of the week when they lost to Boston, who's on just an amazing streak right now, I think they're fine. It's just going to really depend on if they, I guess, figure things out again. It seems like last year they put everything together towards the end of the season. We saw them struggle a little bit in the first couple months with KD as a new addition, Kevin Durant, and now it kind of seems like they're going through that same thing again. People are saying it's because they're not motivated because it's just the first couple months of the season. However, I don't really see that. I just see them not really closing out games like how they used to. And Clay, I think, has been taking a lot more shots again this year. And so maybe that's throwing things off. But I'm really confused as to why they're not the Warriors we're used to seeing. It could be a little bit of drama that we don't know about. There was some discussions over the offseason in the summer about Kevin Durant making a few comments on the Bill Simmons podcast about the Under Armour brand and how no one really wants to wear those shoes, and his teammate, fellow superstar Steph Curry is the big face of Under Armour. So I don't know if that caused any mini drama that's carried over from the offseason into now. It doesn't appear to be on the court, but we don't know what's going on in the locker room. It could be a possibility.
To touch on your point as well, the Steph Curry deal, he's shooting 37% from three in last year. He shot 41, and the year before that, we can't even go over because he was just shooting lights out, 45, 46% in previous years. But Steph Curry's off to a slow start. It seemed like he did this last year. Do you expect him to be in that MVP race, or is he going to fall out a little bit at the end?
I think both him and Kevin Durant are going to be out of the MVP race just by default because they're on the same team and they won the championship last year. So it's sad just to see that, but that's kind of the reality right now with the NBA world. Everyone's looking at Kyrie because of his performance and being able to put this Boston Celtics team basically on his back and being able to win all these games in a row. So there's Kyrie in the discussion. People were saying Giannis Antetokounmpo on the Milwaukee Bucks because of his crazy numbers he was putting up in the first 2 weeks of the NBA. And I think he's still being consistent, but not as crazy as he was in the first 2 weeks. And then there's Kristaps Porzingis, who's been, I think, either leading the league or second in scoring. And there's just so many players this year now who probably could be in the race that haven't really been before.
You're definitely right. And there's a lot of players that seem like they're coming onto the scene a little bit, even though their teams aren't playing as well. And that brings me to my next topic. Who is your surprise team, I guess, coming into this year that you didn't expect to play as well and they have through the first 15, 16 games of the season?
That's tough because I still think that the records are a little misleading right now because just it's so early and some teams are winning more than others. But the Orlando Magic have really surprised everybody in the Eastern Conference. I did not think they were going to be this good for at all this year. To be honest, I thought they were going to be another lottery team. But Aaron Gordon has been able to, I guess, put together a most improved player type year so far. So he might be able to help continue that throughout the season, and that might help him win that award and then in turn help the Orlando Magic win a few more games too. And I think that young roster has been trying to figure things out quite a bit, and with Jonathan Simmons in the addition from the offseason, as well as a few other players when they traded away Serge Ibaka, they got Terrence Ross in return, another athletic kind of swingman. And so they're an interesting team. And Elfrid Payton, I don't think, was playing in the first couple weeks too, which is odd for them to win so many games without their starting point guard. So I think they're the biggest surprise so far in the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, I would say that not in terms of how well they're doing, but OKC to me is the biggest surprise in how they haven't put things together yet. And that is something I don't know if they will. It just kind of seems very frustrating for that team right now and the expectations that were placed upon them.
Yeah, and speaking of OKC, they're 2-4 in their last 6 games, and I was watching the game on, I believe, Friday, and it's not just their offense, it feels like, it's their defense, and their defense just can't figure it out. They're giving up 115, 120 points a game, and they're really struggling. They're 7-8 overall. Do you think that if they're struggling this bad going into the trade deadline, that they'll try to get a few pieces for Paul George or Melo?
I think that they're the organization who would be the type to do that. So I would say it's a possibility, and they're always looking for the next best option, and so I wouldn't put it past them to not do it. I think more than likely they're going to try to figure things out before considering an actual trade. But I mean, Paul George is very, very good. I think Carmelo might be the person who would have to be removed from OKC just because he's kind of been a ball stopper and somewhat of a ball hog, which we all already knew about him. But if he was the old Carmelo from maybe 5 years ago, then it wouldn't be a problem. I think now that he's a bit older and he's still kind of shooting like the number one option on that team, where I think it should be Westbrook and then Paul George and then Melo.
For sure. And that OKC team is just full of superstars, and it kind of goes against what everybody thinks is you just get a bunch of superstars together and they will play all right, and it just hasn't worked out that way. But we're actually going to get into some predictions for next year. in the free agency market here. So LeBron, his contract's up. He can either re-sign with the team or he could leave in free agency. Where do you see him going? Is he going to stay in Cleveland or is he going to go somewhere else?
I don't think he stays in Cleveland, and I think he's going to definitely leave. I'm just not sure where. There's been all these LA rumors for the Lakers. I don't know if that makes sense because I am a Lakers fan, and I don't see it in terms of the team right now, what the results they put up, the experience so far for Lonzo Ball. He doesn't appear to be ready yet for LeBron next season, and I don't know where LeBron's going to go. And it would be really fun to see him be on another team. I originally thought he was going to go to Houston if Houston was going to get Melo and Chris Paul. They did get Chris Paul, but I see LeBron going somewhere where there's probably a few younger players who are up and coming, superstars in the league, and he's probably going to attach himself to a team for the next 4 or 5 more years, I would say, to give himself the best chance to win a championship. And I think it's going to be in the West Coast. I don't think it'll be in the East Coast. And a lot of people say that LeBron would be foolish to leave the Eastern Conference. And I don't agree because I think if LeBron is able to put himself on a roster capable of beating Golden State in the Western Conference, then it would make it that much easier for him to, one, knock out Golden State earlier on in the playoffs, and maybe it's in the second or third round. And then by the time he gets to the finals, he would just be able to beat the other Eastern Conference opponent because he's already been doing that for the past however many years in the Eastern Conference. I think he's pretty confident that he would be able to get to the finals again, and whoever he would face wouldn't be a challenger.
Boy, if you're right, man, the Western Conference final would just be absolutely nuts. With LeBron and like a Golden State type or a Houston in that mix, their road to the finals would be so much more difficult than the East, and then the championship game would almost be like a Little League World Series type where it seems like all the competitive teams are in the international, and then once the international gets there, they just blow out the U.S. But let's move on to some more predictions for next year. So we have LeBron. You think he's going to go to the West. What about Paul George and Melo?
I think Paul George ends up staying with OKC just because of his comments that he made in the offseason that they would have to either beat Golden State or go to the Western Conference Finals. I think if they figure things out, they might be able to make it to the Western Conference Finals. And after he saw Russell Westbrook sign that 5-year max extension with OKC, he knows Russell Westbrook's not going anywhere. I think if Westbrook did not sign that extension, he and Paul George would have been leaving next season in the free agency period. And I think now that Westbrook kind of solidified himself as the Oklahoma City Thunder for the next 5 years, Paul George is going to attach himself to that.
And that would be so much fun to watch. If they could both sign if Russell Westbrook's going to be there for a long time, but if Paul George signs max contract there, that would be a lot of fun for years to come. So going with title predictions this year, though, who do you see coming out of the East and the West?
To be honest, as a Lakers fan, I don't want to see this, but I can't knock the Boston Celtics for what they've done and what they've shown. And just looking at Cleveland right now and what they've produced on the court, I think that Boston would be a fun team, and it'd be a great story if they came out of the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. And then for the West, I would like to see a battle between Golden State and Houston, but I think Golden State ultimately comes out and they both face off. And I think that the Golden State Warriors will probably win it again.
You know, no hot takes for you today, Victor. No, Golden State winning, but I definitely appreciate that. It seems like Golden State, they just have that team that's going to be good for a couple of years, and it's kind of hard to stop. But the one team I want to touch on before I let you go is the Raptors. They won 6 out of their last 7 games. Kyle Lowry's playing well. What do you think about the Raptors, and can they match up with Celtics in the East?
They've been flying under the radar the past week or so, and I think that they could compete with Boston. It's just that the one thing that Boston has that almost every other team in the league doesn't is they have a group of young guys in their 20s and maybe a little younger, and Jason Tatum is 19. They just have a young roster who can run and who can play defense, and most other teams don't. Kyle Lowry's, I think, 31, and DeMar DeRozan's heading to his 30s. I think he's 28 or 29. And so that team, again, it's going to all rely upon health. We saw Kyle Lowry miss, I think, the last second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs last season due to an injury. And I think it's just going to really rely upon health for them again. And also, if they make a move, I think they have to make a move, either trade Jonas Valanciunas, who's been doing pretty well for them, or figure out what you're going to do with DeRozan even, because the one thing that they've been lacking, which DeRozan doesn't have, is the three-point shooting. And I think once they find someone who can be a consistent knockdown shooter, who can create a shot for himself as well. I mean, we've seen Serge Ibaka on that team be able to knock down the three-point shot, but I think that's one thing they still really struggle. They did add C.J. Miles in the offseason, which has helped. However, he's older too, so I think that this team needs to get a little bit younger, and that would help them compete a bit more in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics.
Absolutely, and definitely an underrated quality of Boston is their defense, and they showed that against Golden State that they could play D, and even Tatum seemed like he was comfortable in that defense, and so I thought that was the biggest takeaway from that game, quite honestly, not only Tatum's play, but the defense of Boston holding up against Golden State. But Victor, we appreciate having you on. Victor Kernes from the Rebound podcast. He previewed all 32 teams. It was so much fun. 30 teams. Yeah, 30 teams in the NBA. And it is really, really cool to listen to. So go listen to it on iTunes. But, Victor, thank you very much for coming on, man.
Hey, thank you very much. It's been fun talking. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. We'll get you on down the road here once the NBA starts getting in full steam and college football goes away, all right?
All right, sounds good.
A very special thank you to Victor from the Rebound podcast. Loved having him on. He knows a ton about basketball. So anytime we can pick his brain about some NBA, we love to do it. So it wouldn't be a Tuesday special edition without the regional roundup, and we will get into some chair talk later as well. So without further ado,
Regional Roundup.
let's get this regional roundup started. So we are going to actually start with Utah this week. Utah Utes went to Seattle and they lost to the Huskies 33-30 on a last-second field goal by the Huskies. Huge bummer. They couldn't seal the deal in Alaska Airlines Stadium, but unfortunately for the Utes, they fell just short. But sticking with the state of Utah, BYU lost to UMass last week 16-10, and they play Hawaii for their last game of the season. BYU falls to 3-9. Also, a side note on BYU, Ty Detmer, who won a Heisman Trophy with BYU, is still one of the worst offensive coordinators in the country, but BYU is left with probably the most awkward situation that they could be dealt with, having a Heisman-winning quarterback being their offensive coordinator but not knowing when to fire him or not, because it's just one of those almost Kellen Moore situations where he's so highly regarded within Provo that they just cannot let him go. So huge situation just to look for in Provo and with BYU going forward. It's kind of a sticky situation. I don't know what they're going to do with Ty Detmer, but he has been just absolutely awful as offensive coordinator of BYU. But we are going to move on to Oregon. Oregon State Civil War this week. It is rivalry week. This is one of the best times in college football. Oregon State and Oregon, they will square off this weekend, the Beavers and the Ducks. So that will be a fun one to keep an eye out on, just to see Willie Taggart in his first Civil War bout as the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. But we are actually going to move on to Idaho. And the Vandals, they actually play New Mexico State this week. They are no longer bowl eligible, losing to Coastal Carolina 13-7 last week. And the Idaho Vandals play their way out of a bowl eligibility spot. Boise State, they play Fresno State this week. They are coming off a win 44-17 to Air Force. They had a huge game against Air Force, and they clinched the division at home on the blue. They play Fresno State in their last game of the season. They also play them in the Mountain West Championship as well, that is most likely going to be on the blue. So kind of an awkward little situation that Boise State has, playing the same team twice. But huge, it's just a really bad look for the Mountain West having two teams play each other twice, one in the regular season and one in the conference championship, especially back-to-back games. So that will still be a really fun matchup. The winner gets to go to the Las Vegas Bowl. Doesn't seem like a lot, but from where Boise State started out this season to where they are now, it's definitely an accomplishment. So you have to praise the coaching staff and Brian Harsin. From where they were to where they are now, it's just night and day. So it's really fun to see Brett Rippon actually start throwing the ball all around the field and start having some confidence in his receivers. So the matchup that I have been waiting to get to, the Apple Cup, UW, WSU, Luke Falk, Jake Browning, they square off in Seattle. UW is 10-point favorites. Throw out the point spread. This one is going to be a barn burner. This one is going to be awesome to watch. I don't care whether it's in Seattle. I don't care whether it's in Pullman. You can throw out the records. This one is going to come down to the wire. If not, Luke Falk and the WSU Cougars are going to throw it around the field. Jake Browning didn't look good again last week against the Utes. And what hasn't been talked a lot about is the WSU defense. Monta Afa and that defense have been filthy. So this will be such an exciting game. I'm pumped for the Apple Cup. If you are not from Washington, you may not understand, but this game is so much fun. Huge rivalry, and all across the state you have broken homes because of this rivalry, and it's just such a great atmosphere. I'm really excited for the Apple Cup to start. But that is going to be it for our regional roundup. We are next going to get into some chair talk, so let's go.
Chair Talk.
All right, in the chair this week is actually going to be the whole Buffalo Bills organization. Bills, what are you doing? You replace Tyrod Taylor with a rookie quarterback. He throws 5 interceptions in the first half. You can't even blame it on him because he is a rookie quarterback. You knew what he was capable of. Why do you even leave him out there for 5 interceptions? After 3, you would be like, man, this guy's just not having it. It's just not his day. He's not having a good day. I just cannot believe you would even leave him out there. And then you replace him with Tyrod Taylor, destroying his confidence or lack thereof going into the game, and Tyrod Taylor lights it up, throws 2 touchdowns, or runs for 1, passes for 1, no interceptions, has a good game, although they still get blown out. But Buffalo Bills, your organization is in the chair. You are as bad as the Browns. You cannot figure it out, and that's why you are landing in the chair this week on the Tuesday edition of the Armchair Army. So that is going to be it for me, everybody. We got through some regional roundup. A huge shout out to Victor Kernes for coming on the podcast. It was so awesome to have you on, picking your brain about some NBA and especially about the rookies. I love going into Lonzo Ball and Jason Tatum and figuring out how good they're going to be down the stretch. I know it's early in the season, but really fun. I also want to just give a special announcement that Adam Amin is going to be on the podcast here in 2 weeks, so you are going to want to tune into that. I also have Shane Williams-Rhodes, so I'm plugging 2 special guests in here. Shane Williams-Rhodes is actually going to be next Tuesday, and Adam Amin a Tuesday after that, so both of them are going to be such fun interviews. I can't wait to have them on. But you guys, thank you for listening. Subscribe. Go like the Facebook page. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. We do Periscope Lives every single week as well, so join me on those. Guys, again, thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day.